Would you please introduce yourself?
Jonathan Oppenheimer of the Oppenheimer family, interested and passionate conservationist who fundamentally believes that protecting the environment is an essential, important and central part of the survival of us as a people and as a race.
Mr. Jonathan, would you please tell us how did the conference come about?
The conference started in a partnership with De Beers when the family was still involved. Given that De Beers, across its different mining communities, and we as a family across different pieces of land that we had various research programs, and we thought it would be a wonderful opportunity to share those with the community at large. And started 10 years ago. This has progressively grown in size, grown in complexity, grown in the quality of the presenters. And this being the 10th conference, the first just led by the Oppenheimer family, has been an amazing one. I think the quality of the presentations, the depth and breadth of the presentations, and the challenges that they have raised and the solutions that they have provided has been truly extraordinary.
Also, would you please tell us how important is biodiversity? And for instance, here in South Africa, I don't think a lot of people are aware of climate change and the effect it has on our planet. What do you think of that?
There was a presentation on Monday which demonstrated that in the next 70 years, this is off a base of deep scientific analysis, that part of the West Coast temperature will rise by 1.5 to 5 degrees. This will dramatically change its environment. It will mean that it will become a desert somewhat similar to the Sahara. If you don't understand that that is going to change the way we live, concentrate where humans can exist, then it's going to be very difficult to actually address meaningfully the way the world works. What we heard during the conference is that the environment we live in is under threat. It's under threat in the way we live, in what we do, and how we interact and consume that environment. And what we need to do is we need to find a way for us as human beings to live in that environment, continue to prosper and do better, continue to create the jobs that are necessary to ensure social stability, say here in South Africa, but across the continent at large, across the world. And at the same time, not consume the environment at a rate which means that actually we won't have an environment to live in. So we really face two threats. A threat of social stability driven by opportunities for betterment and lifestyle and well-being, and a threat of the environment coming to consumers. And we have to find the middle ground of that space. And what this conference is focusing on, as a conservation and environmental conference, is on the aspects that how do you preserve the environment so that it'll be here for our children and our grandchildren. At the same time, in parallel, we need to think about ways to access that environment in a more sensitive way, but not in a way that causes society to collapse and fight itself. And so those are the two great pillars of the challenge that face us in the 21st century, and we need to solve, because we won't have a world to solve if we leave it to our children.
And lastly, one of the things that stood out when I came to the conference on the first day, on the first day of the conference,
yes,
they were talking about passing on the message, making it easier for people to understand what this means, what climate change means. How do you think?
How do you do that?
How do you do that? Yeah, that's what I wanted to actually ask.
If you could solve that, please tell me. It's actually the multi-trillion-dollar question that confronts us. In a world which is fundamentally reductive, and by reductive I mean looks for simple answers. We want an answer on our phone today. Get on Google and it'll tell us how to get from A to B. That's what we want. A complex, multidimensional, sensitive system does not sit comfortably in that world of the cell phone. So we need to find ways to communicate with that generation of people who've grown up in this digital, reductive world the real complexity of the issues. And we need to find ways to translate what are highly complex scientific data points into stories which catch the attention, the emotion of the people who we need to convince, and the people who we truly need to convince, because those who live in the rural areas intuitively have an understanding of this, are those who live in the urban areas. And it's an interesting anecdote, and I don't know if it's true, but I've been told many times that in certain cities in the United States, more than 20% of the population don't know where beef comes from. They have no idea that it actually comes from a cow. They think it comes from a factory. And if that is the perspective, and you're trying to share with them the sensitivity of the world that we live in, the threat of it becoming a desert and uninhabitable, then how do you share that in a way that grabs them? Talking about rainfall and temperature increases doesn't cut the mustard. It'll only cut the mustard when there's no more beef on the shelf.
Thank you very much, sir. That is awesome.